Good evening and welcome you all for yet another The Big Talk. This is Medul Krish speaking to you from Amrita Vishwavidyapeetham, Etimade, Coimbatore. The topic today is about the life of a soldier, as well as to also let you all know how do you adorn the uniform of a defense personnel. For this, we have here with Major General Ramesh, who will be with us for next 60 minutes or so, briefing about the life of a soldier as well as guiding us towards how one could make an entry into the defense arena. So on behalf of Amrita Vishwavidyapeetham, General Sir, let me say Vande Mataram and welcome you to the Big Talk. Welcome you, sir. Before I get on to briefing you about General, I wish to mention that I know the family of General for quite some time. And to begin with, Major General A.V. Ramesh is an alumnus of Indian Military Academy, Dehradun. He is a graduate in mechanical engineering from Madurai Kamaraj University and has done masters in technology in industrial and management engineering from the Indian Institute of Technology, Kanpur. He has also earned a distinction both in masters in management studies from Osmania University and masters of philosophy in defense and strategic studies from Madras University. The general officer has put in over 33 years of service and has done all the important professional courses in the Army, including the higher defense management course at CDM Secunderabad and the National Defense College course at New Delhi. Prior to his current appointment as Major General of Electronics and Mechanical Engineering, Headquarters Eastern Command, Kolkata, he has also served as the Major General in charge administration at the Defense Services Staff College at Wellington and as the head of Faculty Planning Administration training at College of Defense Management, Secunderabad. The general officer is married to Mrs. Hemlata, an educationalist with over 23 years of teaching experience. The couple has a son who is a BTech in chemical engineering from National Institute of Technology, Trichy, and has an MBA from Xavier Labor Relations Institute, Jamshedpur, and presently he's working with an investment banking division of Goldman Sachs. Welcome you, General Sir, for the Big Talk, and it's our pleasure and we are honored to have your presence here. And I'm sure this talk is going to take us a long way, and many of us who would be only knowing a bit of what the defense service is all about, by the end of this talk, we will go with our heads swollen with a lot of information and knowledge being shared by you with your vast experience of 33 years adorning the uniform in the Indian Army. So welcome to you, sir.
Thank you.
The Big Talk. Before I commence my discussion and clarification with you, General, I have heard people say, or I have read in some books, that there are three different types of salutes. The Army salutes this way, the Navy salutes this way, and the Air Force salutes this way. And I believe the Army, the palm is always open because you can trust the Indian Army. The Navy has a lot of grease and oil, so they salute this way so that downward, the palm is downward. And the Air Force salutes this way because 45 degrees they're taking off to the sky. Is that true, General? Is it true, or it is just been spoken about?
No, this interesting explanation for the salute is something which you told me.
Only you are hearing for the first time, I think.
And it will help me in my future talks too. Because this is not something which I ever thought of.
On the lighter side, yeah.
No, it isn't. Actually, a lot of things that we typically tend to take for granted There is a deep meaning and a logic behind it, except that most of the times you never bother to get, dig down and figure out why. But this is a very interesting question you posed. I need to find out. Maybe on a bilateral basis, I'll get back to you later.
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah. I know. I just wanted to clear it off with you. Now I get the answer from you. Let me go straight to my first. General Saab, like you have completed 33 years and you had actually got into the services. When did you really start thinking in your mind? Was it as a school student or was it while you were doing your engineering? When did you think that I should get into the defense forces and serve this nation? When did that idea come to you in your mind?
Yeah, to be honest to you on this question, it was during my final year of engineering.
All right.
When we decided to give it a shot at both the SSB for Army as well as the Navy. And the Army SSB happened earlier, the results came earlier, and I decided to join earlier.
So it was only during the time of your final year of engineering.
That is when the awareness, I was there in NCC in school, but I was not there in NCC in college.
Oh, you were in the school, but not in the college.
Not in the college.
General Saab, let me take on with, like, there is something called, NCOs. That is that non-commissioned officers. There's something called JCOs. That's the junior commissioned officers. Then you have commissioned officers. Now, we will discuss about the commissioned officers to start off with. And before I commence, I want to just talk about something called the Rashtriya Indian Military Academy, Dehradun, which is supposed to be a Sainik school. And there are many Sainik schools. I am from Coimbatore. There is a Sainik school near Udumalpet, Amravati. I mean, what do they do in the Sainik school? And if you are into a Sainik school, is it easy for you to get into those three wings of defense, Navy, Air Force and Army? So what does the Sainik school actually take you through, General Saab? This would be my first clarification.
Okay. Now, as far as RIMC, what used to be called as the Rashtriya Indian Medical College earlier is now called the RIMA now. And this is exactly what you were now mentioning, wherein we have quota for each of the states. But let me clarify that whether you study in a Sainik school or you study in an RIMC, it doesn't automatically facilitate your entry into the armed forces. It is just that I would say these are managed by the armed forces. We have the principal of the school, normally from the Army, Navy or Air Force, normally from the education stream, but you can also have a person from the non-education stream also taking care of the institution. There is a certain regime, there is a certain kind of a discipline that the children are inculcated with at a very young age. I would say that staying in that kind of a regimented environment will facilitate them insofar as possibly more confident when it comes to facing the SSB, all right. But nevertheless, they have to go through the entrance exams. And the school also has a structured preparation mechanism in place for the children to be able to do ace in those kind of exams. And there is a kind of camaraderie amongst the children that all of us should get into the armed forces and serve the nation, and that kind of a spirit is there, because of which you will find a large chunk of these children eventually ending up serving either the Army, Navy or the Air Force.
Okay, there is also like, this is I think from the 7th standard or 6th standard, which year, I think it's the 6th or 7th standard that you make an entry.
Yes.
And
you can enter from across every year, but the typical entry is in class 6.
6th. And General Saab, like, what about this? When I go to schools, there are quite a few of them wanting to join the defense forces, and they all want to, maybe in the 11th or 12th standard, they would prefer to write the National Defense Academy, get on to the Kadagavasla. And they do the 3 years of, it's again a degree course, if I'm right. In NDA, they give you a degree from Jawaharlal Nehru universities. That's what I understand. Once you get into that, how do you get into NDA? How do you think that we can crack the examination and then be a part of those National Defense Academy, then get into those 3 defense, whether Army, Navy or Air Force? So could you just tell us about how a child, a student of 12th or 11th, should prepare towards cracking those NDA, which is quite tough. It's not that easy entry into NDA. So you have any suggestions, or you have some clues or some guidelines where our children can use and get on to the NDA? Over to you.
I haven't given a competitive exam in a long time now. So okay. I'm not good enough at giving advice on that. But let me tell you, as far as option to join Army, Navy or Air Force after class 12 is concerned, there are 2 ways you can actually do it. One is the National Defense Academy route, wherein you give the Combined Defense Services exam conducted by the UPSC, and thereafter you face SSB. There is a combined merit list that is taken out. Depending on whatever is your choice, Army, Navy or Air Force, you can either become an Army cadet, an Air Force cadet or a Naval cadet. Certain portion of the training is common to all the three services. Those who get to join Army end up getting a graduation, either a science degree or a arts degree, depending on what they want to, they choose and what is their specialization in class 11 and 12 also. Those who join Navy will necessarily have to be from the science stream, and those who have to be pilots will again have to be from the science stream. And those who join Navy will eventually end up getting a engineering degree. That is a requirement in the naval Indian Navy today. Whether you are from the executive stream or the logistics or the technical, you necessarily have to be a graduate engineer. So that having said, the second entry for those of us who have PCM, that is physics, chemistry and mathematics in class 12. I'm talking about Army to be specific now. Absolutely. We have something what is called as the technical entry scheme. In fact, even as we are talking, which is part of my script also, the 44th TES course advertisement is there on the website of Indian Army.
Oh, wonderful.
Now, how this works is you have to cross the threshold qualifying mark of 70% across these three subjects. The specifics are given in the application form. Thereafter, what they do, they call you for a services selection board interview directly. You don't have to face an exam. After this SSB interview is common for any kind of an entry. And the way it is that I will be covering some portions of it in my talk also.
Sure, sir.
In case those of them who are successful in SSB, then there is a merit list that is drawn. And based on the merit list, those who get selected will get to do a 4-year degree program within Army. Now this is done at 3 places. We have it at the College of Military Engineering, which is in Pune. Then we have it in the Military College of Telecommunication Engineering, which is in Mau, which is a place near Indore. Then the third place it is done is the Military College of Electronics and Mechanical Engineering, which is in Secunderabad. Typical batch size is between 30, 35, 40, whatever it is. So you can say around 100 to 120 in a cycle of 6 months. So approximately 200 to 240 vacancies in a year is what the technical entry scheme is all about. Now this is a very attractive scheme for 2 reasons. A, that you get to join after class 12. B, that you get to get a professional degree at the end of 4 years, and it is permanent commission thereafter. And the military training is kind of dovetailed into the academic portion also. So at the end of 3 years, you become a commissioned officer, and after the 4th year, you get the military portion. That is, you are a lieutenant captain, the way it is, with 1 year of advantage, and you get to choose an arm or service depending on how many vacancies are there at that point of time. So I would exhort class 11 and 12 children who are keen on joining the forces and those who have physics, chemistry and mathematics to give a shot at TES. Those who do not have physics, chemistry and mathematics can definitely look at the other option. And there are other options available to them after graduation also, should they be keen and motivated to join.
So Indian Army, to join Indian Army, science stream is not a must, isn't it, General Sir?
Indian Army science stream is not a must. Not
okay,
a must.
So,
but maybe you can't be, you can't opt for TES if you're not from science stream.
Absolutely. And there was a talk. About girls being admitted into the NDA. I'm sure so far girls are not being permitted into NDA. Is that rule still continues that it's only for the boys, not for the girls?
So and if far, so, yes, but I think
why? Today the girls are flying jets and fighter pilots. So why are they not? Any reason? I mean, I just came to my mind. I thought I'd just clear it.
I think it is just a question of time, and it will happen because even the thing of permanent commission has come in just now. So we have to give time to the organization to be able to adapt to all these things.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I mean that would be the right answer which I expected from you. And General Saab, like going ahead on this now, not that everybody can get into NDA. If you get into NDA, you are sure about yourself wearing the uniform, either a Navy or a Air Force or Army. But if you miss it, either you do your engineering and like you, sir, you get into those technical, lines. And people who don't do engineering, they finished a degree, let's say BSc Chemistry, BSc Physics, or BA Economics, BCom. There is something called a CDS, Combined Defense Service Examination. That also you explained to as well. And once you qualify in the CDS, or whether you are through a technical or a non-technical, you go for something called SSB. What is that? What is that? Staff Service
Selection Board.
Selection Board. Selection Board, and I believe it is not. It is something to do with the testing about your overall personality, right? The holistic personality of yours in terms of decision making, promptness, innovations, creativity. And they call it as something called OLQ, officer-like quality. I mean, and if you prove yourself all the 5 days, I understand. I've seen people going in the trucks and in Bangalore. In Bangalore, my niece has gone for that particular. She was actually recommended, but then she didn't come into the merit list. But then I was there morning, dropping her, picking up her in the evening. So she says, "Uncle, today I'm through. Tomorrow I'm going to come back." So people that are disqualified every day, they go back to their homes. I mean, what is this SSB? I mean, if you could just tell us briefly about what is this SSB, what are the type of testings they do, physical, mental, whatever. Over to you, General. Everybody would like to listen to that, General.
Okay.
About SSB.
Now, as far as Services Selection Board is concerned, the interview is held over a period of 5 days.
5 days, okay.
Yes, and there are 2 stages to it. In stage 1, which is on day 1, what happens is we call it the screening. So in the screening, essentially, there are 2 things that are done. One is the people who come for screening are subjected to verbal and non-verbal tests, that is questions, which is basic aptitude. Thereafter, there is something what is called as PPDT, that is Papa Papa Delta Tango, that is picture perception discussion test.
Oh my God.
So,
okay.
Yeah, what happens is they're put into small groups. The picture perception test is taken. They are asked to discuss amongst themselves and then come up with a common storyline, to put it very briefly. Now on day 1, at the end of the screening, almost 40 to 50% of the people would typically make it to stage 2, which is from day 2 onwards. So day 2, 3, 4 and 5, there are no more people who are taken off thereafter. Either people are taken off at the end of stage 1, and those who are not taken off at stage 1 will go through stage 2, that is all the balance of the 4 days. And in the balance of the 4 days, what normally happens, there are 3 major activities that I can straight away think of. One is there is a group GTO who checks out your ability for group dynamics. Then there is a psychologist who gets a chance to interact with you, explores your answers, looks at it from the psychological perspective. Then there is a comprehensive interview of the candidate that is done, wherein you're tested for your current affairs, your general knowledge, your domain knowledge, your military knowledge. Since you are so keen in joining Indian Army, how much of knowledge have you acquired about the organization? How much of interest have you shown, whether it is in indigenization, the kind of weapons we have, all that. And of course, physical fitness, I would say it is basic physical fitness in the sense that you should be able to navigate through those tests, which is very comfortable, so long as you are basically an average fit person. So that's the kind of thing that the person typically goes through those 5 days. And those of them who are successful at the end of it are asked to go through a very comprehensive medical examination. And then, of course, the combined merit between the written and the SSB is taken out. And based on the merit list and the vacancies, the successful candidates are called for the training into the academies. So that's how the process works.
There's something called for Air Force, like Air Force Common Admission Test. AFCAT or something like this. It's again beyond Combined Defense Service examination. It's a separate examination to get into Indian Air Force.
See, so what I wasn't prepared for this question of yours.
Sorry.
No, it's all right. Air Force has got an AFCAT and Navy has got something what is called as INET, Indian Naval Entrance Test.
What is that, General?
INET. Indian Naval Entrance Test. So Air Force has got AFCAT, Navy has got INET, and of course, as far as entry into Army is concerned, about which I have a little bit more awareness.
Absolutely.
Through the Combined Defense Services as well as the Technical Entry Scheme.
General, again, it's all connected to Army. You have Indian Military Academy for a permanent commission, and you have something to do with OTA, Officers Training Academy. Now, what's the difference between a permanent commission and a short service commission, General?
See, permanent commission firstly is for the service length is 20 years.
Okay.
Right? And in the case of a short service, you have an option to quit after. You can either quit after 5, you can quit after 10, or you can quit after 14. So there are multiple quit options that are available to you. You can choose to do that. So those of us who want to have an exposure to the services, come out and again try out at our hands at other careers, then short service is a better option. But those of us who want to be for the long haul in the organization, then permanent commission is a better option. That's the way it is.
That's fantastic. Now let's get on to
as far as the training goes, there is no differentiation. Both of them are equally capable, and they are capable of delivering and discharging any duties that are assigned to them for the duration that they stay in the organization.
Yeah. If I made to understand that all those the women cadets, I mean the women officers, like they are, like I said, my niece was qualified into SSB, and the training takes place at OTA, Officers Training Academy. They don't, do they come to IMA? No, they don't go to IMA. All the girls are, I mean, the women cadets are being. Now, what is the future? What is the future for them in the Indian Army? I mean, if a lady joins for a short service commission, she joins as a lieutenant. How long they could go? They could become a major general, lieutenant general. Have they? I mean, what would be the progression? I just wanted to have a clarification because there are so many girls who are watching this and they want to know about their prospects in the Indian Army.
No, firstly, women entry as far as Army is concerned is available across certain supporting arms and services to start with. And permanent commission is something which has come in very recently. So it will take some time for us to figure out when this lot of people will keep moving up, and that is one. And otherwise, there is no differentiation in the training and the postings and the manner in which, there is nothing.
Absolutely. So you once you complete your both it's a 1.5 years training in IMA, and is it 1 year in OTA, or it's a number of months are the same?
I wouldn't remember it straight away, but I know
you completed 33 years, but IMA it is how many months is it?
No, for the technical entry in IMA it is 1 year, and for the direct entry, that is those who come through the CDS route, it is 1.5 years.
Okay.
So that's how it is.
Absolutely, that's true. So you once you complete, you commission yourself as a lieutenant, and then you move on to captain, right? And how does the hierarchy go up? After captain, what do you be? How long does it take?
After captain, like I was 6 to 8 years, 6 years you become a major, and 13 years you become a lieutenant colonel, which is again a time scale promotion. Thereafter, they get to face the first selection board for the rank of colonel equivalent, which is normally somewhere between 15 to 14.5 to 16.5, depending on which vertical you are from. Thereafter, you spend considerable amount of time as a colonel. Then you get to face another selection board for the rank of brigadier, which happens somewhere around slightly before 22 to 24 years of service or so. Then you are then you get to become a major general somewhere around 30 years of service, 30, 31 like that. And again, at each stage there is a selection board that you typically have to go through for getting selected to the next rank.
So recently, I mean, a year back or so, I mean, maybe a couple of years back, there's a new creation of a post called, Chief of Defence Staff, right? I mean, could you throw some light on that? What is the responsibility, roles and responsibility of a Chief of Defence Staff, CDS? Does all the Navy, Air Force report, all the generals, admirals, and chief marshals, they all report to him? How is it just a
I wasn't prepared for this, Mr. Krish, because
I'm sorry. I'm extremely sorry for that. So
no, I was preparing for my thing primarily to give a glimpse of what the Army is all about to the students.
Now coming back to Army, General Saab, coming back to Army, like you hear something about brigadier controls a brigade, then you have a company, battalion, platoon. Can you just throw some light on this? How is that formation of a battalion or a brigade?
Firstly, battalion, brigade, everything is got to do with the infantry, and the organization structure is much more complex than. I mean, I don't want to oversimplify it, but I'm not going to be complicating it also.
Absolutely, yeah.
Suffice to say that the smallest subunit is a platoon. Thereafter, we have a number of platoons make a company. A couple of 3-4 companies together make a battalion. 3-4 battalions make up a brigade. 2 to 3 brigades will make up a division, 2 to 3 divisions will make up a corps, okay. 2 to 3 corps will make up a command. So that's how it is. But I think, for most people, the organizational structure and complexity is, I would say it is not so relevant at the point of time of joining, because this is an ever evolving thing, and it really doesn't matter in the sense, you could be anywhere so long as there is a specific task that is cut out for you and you are expected to do the task.
Now, I've heard something like you have some infantry, you have armored, you have signals, you have EME, like what you are representing, and artillery. I mean, what are the different roles they have, General, in the sense that what do they do? Like, what is their roles? I mean, how do they support us?
Again, it will be very difficult to oversimplify the answer.
No, just briefly, because we hear
what happens is. The infantry is the one if you put it very simply and understand, they have the small arms with them, they have the surveillance devices with them, they can have medium machine guns, light machine guns, and up to heavy machine guns and mortars. Then you have the armored corps, which is essentially the tankmen. They have the T-72s, they have the Arjuns, they have the T-90s, the Bhishma tank, that is. Then you have the mechanized infantry who have the Sarats, that is the infantry combat vehicle with them. Then you have the regiment of artillery who have the guns, the Dhanush, which you get to read in the newspapers, or the K9, which again you get to read in the papers, or even the Bofors for that matter. Then you have the Corps of Signals who are responsible for providing communication, the Corps of Engineers who are responsible for bridging, demining, obstacle, those kind of water supply, those kind of activities. Then you have the Army Air Defense, which has got the air defense systems. Then you have the Army Aviation, who look after who handle the Hepter fleet of Indian Army. Then coming to services, we have the Army Ordnance Corps, who take care of logistics and ammunition. Then the Army Service Corps, who look after supplies, rations. Then you have the Corps of Electronics and Mechanical Engineers, to which I belong to, responsible for end-to-end life cycle sustenance of all equipment that is in service. Then you have the Army Postal Corps. Then you have the Remount Veterinary Corps. Then you have the Army Medical Corps, then you have the Army Dental Corps, then you have the Military Nursing Service, okay. Then the Intelligence Corps. So there are, multiple specializations, multiple verticals. So everybody has got a job to do. It's like kind of an orchestra, so just that people get together and then that's how it is.
Yeah, thanks a lot, General, on briefing about this. Soldier, can you tell us, like, how is the life of a soldier? Of course, we are talking about the commissioned officers and JCOs, but could you just tell us the life of a soldier? He joins us as a soldier, and what he does from morning till evening. How do you prepare him for the war, or whatever it does? So we would like to hear from you. How is it a soldier?
See,
because they are tough people. We all see the soldier as a tough personality, but how do you make them tough, and what is their day-to-day life, and how do we treat them, and just a brief on that.
Essentially, it's got to do with a whole lot of training that we do. There's a lot of importance in the organization for training, and training is not something that get to do at the beginning in the academy and that's the end of it. No, there is so much of training that happens through the life cycle of a person in the organization. You get to train much after even 2 decades, 3 decades of service. You still put through multiple training programs. So it is training in peace and constant working with the equipment and other things which fine tunes the skills of the soldiers, that he is able to deliver what he is able to do, and the kind of ethos that is built into him. This is I had prepared something on this, so if you permit, I can't hear your audio.
Yeah, please go ahead, General. We'll be only too pleased to hear and listen to you on that.
Yeah, the soldier is always having a sense of responsibility about him, and even when he is in public, there is a certain manner in which he is expected to conduct himself. So that's possibly the reason why you say that a soldier is never off duty. So even when he is on leave, it's almost that he is on duty, and his conduct has got to be immaculate and above board, irrespective of the fact that he could very well be on leave also. Now, the qualities that we typically kind of infuse in the soldier, which is true for officers as well, is first is the esprit de corps, wherein you are expecting him to have camaraderie and brotherhood amongst his fellow team members, and a spirit of selfless sacrifice, wherein it is kind of ingrained into them as well as us that Naam, Namak and Nishan, you live for the honor of the country and also for the flag of the regiment to which you belong to. Fearlessness, that is valor, is kind of inbuilt, but that also comes from his confidence in and his ability in handling the equipment and the kind of training that he's been subjected to. One very interesting thing about our organization is the non-discrimination. There is no caste, creed, or religion, and all of us will stand under the same roof and pray, irrespective of what religion, caste, or creed we may belong to. Fairness and honesty is another thing. Discipline and integrity, fidelity, honor, courage. These are all some things which kind of is instilled in him time and again, that it becomes kind of second nature. Now, when it comes to officers, there is a bit of a transition, is that it is taught to us. We have something what is called as the Chetwood motto, wherein we say that, that the safety, honor, and the welfare of your country comes first, always and every time. And the honor, welfare, and comfort of the men that you command comes next. And your own ease, comfort, and safety comes last, always and every time. So this is something which is instilled into every officer of the Indian Army. And that is something we are all expected to live by.
General Sir, we have heard something to do with Eastern Command. Now, yours is, I was just going through your profile. You are from Eastern Command, Southern Command. So how many commands are there, and how is that command being formed? I mean, about 5 or 6 or 7 commands. What is that command means? Now, you are from Eastern Command. Kolkata is your headquarters. But what does that command mean?
No, the commands are based on geographical things. So we have 6 commands, including the central command, and we have one separate command called the Army Training Command.
Okay.
So Northeast, Southwest, Center, then Army Training Command.
There is one more, it used to be headed by those. I remember one of my friends' dad was a Major General, Mr. Mahadevan. Then he was with TNPSC as the chairman and all those things. There used to be, the board used to show AP, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Karnataka. What is that particular position which I'm talking about? He is in charge of AP, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, like that. You're able to get my question.
You're talking about the static headquarters, like we have something in Chennai called the Dakshin Bharat area. What used to be the Andhra, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka area, that's been correct. Dakshin Bharat area, yes.
Now, how is it like, if you ask me, in between the Sepoys and the officer, there are like Havildars and, Subedars and what do you call sub subedar or something like that. How are they managing those? They are all, they have those Sibais under there. How is that ranking going on? Like you mentioned about captain.
Well, as much as career advancement for officers is there is a career advancement for the Jawan also. He joins as a Sepoy, he gets promoted to a Lance Nayak, then he gets promoted to a Nayak, he gets promoted to a Havildar. A select few of them get to become junior commissioned officers. He starts off as a Nayak Subedar, then he can become a Subedar and the Subedar Major. So that is how the career growth path for him is also kind of there.
What is an honorary captain? There's something which I thought I should ask you. After Subedar Major, there is something called a honorary captain.
Yes.
What is that, General?
There is a selection process which happens for them. And those of them who distinguished themselves in service, who served in difficult areas, some of them would have got a lot of gallantry awards and other things. A select few were chosen and given this benefit of honorary captain, wherein he can put it in front of his name, as well as it gives him certain financial advantages also.
And he could wear the uniform.
Make it.
Uniform of a captain also he could wear.
Yes.
Now you mentioned about awards. We hear in papers during Republic Day, Paramveer Chakra, Veer Chakra. So what are the types of awards for those meritorious service in the different services? Whatever few awards,
No,
which you
it
can
is,
just,
there are,
which is the highest one. If I get that, I've done the best of my service to the nation. Paramveer Chakra, I don't know. I'm a ignorant man as far as the defense is concerned. If somebody gets a Paramveer Chakra, then you have Veer Chakra.
No, it is, there are essentially two things. One is there are gallantry awards, and then there are these distinguished awards. When it comes to gallantry, there is gallantry in the face of enemy and gallantry not in the face of enemy. When it is gallantry in the face of enemy, you have this gradability of Paramveer Chakra, Mahavir Chakra, Veer Chakra, then thereafter you have the, when it comes to the not in the face of enemy, you have the Ashok Chakra, Shaurya Chakra,
Ashok Chakra. Okay.
Ashok Chakra is the highest for gallantry, not in the face of enemy. Then you come to distinguished awards. You have the Param Vishisht Seva Medal, Uttam Youth Seva Medal, then Ati Vishisht Seva Medal, Youth Seva Medal, Sena Medal, and then Vishisht Seva Medal. So that is the gradability of the distinguished awards. That's given for distinguished service. So these are the.
Okay. Oh, there's so many awards, right? I mean, Ashok Chakra is it stands on the top, right, General?
No, Ashok Chakra is for gallantry, not in the face of enemy. Okay. Yes, but Paramveer Chakra is gallantry in the battlefield. So that's how it is. Okay. So it would be, you can't compare. I wouldn't want to risk comparing the two. That cannot be correct. Yeah.
Right. So I mean, all are identified by those. You see, I find the officers not wearing those full. You can't wear because there are so many awards, but they have some ribbons. 1, 2, 3. So you could identify those awards through those ribbons. The pattern are different, right?
Yes.
Now coming back to the other question connected to the university and the defense, I understand in some countries, not in India, I don't know which other countries, that if somebody has to take up a job into a government or into a private corporates, 2 or 3 years of their after graduation, they have to go through the drill as a soldier, right? That's a must. If you don't serve the defense, you don't get a job. And what do you think that that type of thing will certainly help the country, or how you could discipline yourself as a better citizen than somebody not serving the country and then straight away get into, I mean, these are the doubts which I have in the mind. But those countries would be doing well, no? Because you said that students who go for the Sainik school, they really discipline. You can differentiate a student of a Sainik school and a non-Sainik school. They're totally disciplined. So will this help of 2 years of rigorous serving the country through defense and then getting on to those government and private institutions? Will it going to, just your personal view on this, General?
See, there is something there is something in the pipeline on this. But the exact contours of that are still not there. So, frankly, even I don't have much insight into how it will eventually come out. But there is some thinking happening in this direction.
I had gone through your profile and you had done your defense studies. I also studied in University of Madras, and Madras University you have the defense, why if that is brought to all the colleges, like all the arts and science colleges, even to the engineering colleges, a portion of the defense study which is not brought in, how is it going to really help our students to understand the importance of serving the country through these defense forces? And why is it not being done? I don't know. I think somebody has to bell the cat and say, hey, look, there should be a portion, or there should be a subject called defense studies, because everybody must know how difficult it is to serve the nation wearing a uniform, right? There are so many indirect ways of serving nations. I'm not denying that. But the real, because even today I consider that Jai Jawan, Jai Kisan, right? And of course, there is one more person called teacher, because teacher is above all this, whatever it is. So when you give so much of importance saying Jai Jawan and Jai Kisan, why is that the universities have not, because I represent a university, why is that the government of India has not insisted that in a semester or a 2 semester, they study about the different formations? And because by learning different formation, actually you improve not just your knowledge, you improve your brain itself, because the strategies that you implement, the formation of a war, all this will go a long way. What do you think about it, General? I'm taking a long time asking you a question.
No, that's all right. But you know what, the way I want to think is like this, there are enough opportunities in the form of National Cadet Corps, which is there. Those of us who get a chance to do it in school, there is a certain exposure you get because NCC automatically, whether it is an air wing NCC or a naval wing or an army wing NCC, you're typically connected to the services in some way because there is an instructor who comes, he puts you through the spaces of parades, then there is rank equivalent that is brought in, you're given exposure to some amount, taken on some visits. So NCC is one excellent opportunity.
Absolutely.
So as many people who can possibly capitalize on that should, whether it is in school, and those of us who missed out in school can give it a shot at the college. Now, defense and strategic studies, what you were asking, at least in Chennai, there are at least a couple of places where this specific faculty is there. But I'm not too sure if everybody would be wanting to do that. And what I would say is that there are many ways in which people can typically contribute. In the sense, some discussion we had some other time also, wherein you want to make the nation self-reliant.
Absolutely.
You can take part in this campaign for Atmanirbharta, where the kind of Make in India campaign that is happening, the import substitution you want to do. Yes, those of us who want to become soldiers, brilliant. But those of us who have the ability in us to do these things, take up some entrepreneurial thing and work towards that. I think even that is a contribution to the nation's might as well.
General, I think we spoke quite a bit about the Indian Army and the defense that we have today, Navy and the Air Force. But most of us are waiting to hear from you. What are the pay and perquisites, that a defense personnel can certainly enjoy? What level you start and how much you can go. I'm sure it will be there in the net, but still, they're all very keen. Well, they're very keen to know. There are some questions coming up here, right? So could you just tell us, like, what's, I understand, this is my understanding, maybe I'm wrong, that a lieutenant starts with somewhere around 75,000 rupees a month or so, then it goes up and goes up. So what are the perquisites that army personnel or a defense personnel can go through? Over to you, General, on this clarification.
Again, Mr. Krish, what happened? I thought since there is so much of it available on the net.
I know. But approximate figures, at least the perquisites perquisites what you have. You have something to do with CSD, because you need to get the law. You see, the people who are actually, as you said, service before self. I mean, the country is most important.
Let me put it this way.
Yes, sir.
What is not known to people is the kind of opportunities that you get inside the organization. Let me come to the pay and perquisites part slightly later, because pay is important. But beyond a point, pay is not very important.
Absolutely,
in the sense that there is a point of time when it no longer is. So if you look at it from a 360-degree perspective, what the organization has got to offer, whether it's a kind of terrain that you get to serve in, is something which you don't get to in other career opportunities, whether it is the glaciers of Siachen or the jungles of the Northeast or the deserts of Rajasthan. And also, a little known fact is that we are the largest contributors to the contingents of United Nations peacekeeping forces all over the world. So a lot of officers get a chance to go abroad, serve in UN nations, rub shoulders with armies of other worlds, and a selected lot of people also get a chance to train abroad. There are people who get to go to the US, the American US War College, Army War College in US, or to the institutions in UK or in Germany or in France or in Japan. So of course, the best of the best only get a chance to go there. So these are all opportunities, something which doesn't come so very easily. And a lot of training programs that you do even within the country, there are opportunities for you to rub shoulders with the members of defense forces from other countries as well. So there is so much of collaborative learning opportunities that happens, so much of learning about the other cultures, other countries that you get to learn, something which doesn't happen. Now, one other thing which the armed forces typically has to offer is the adventure and sports. The access to adventure and sports and the opportunity is something which is not so very easily available. And especially, I would call it as a niche category sports like sailing, rowing, equitation, then shooting, or for that matter, any sport you take, or even skydiving, parasailing, then paragliding, then what you call ski jumping, you name a thing, the opportunities are available in the armed forces, and we have those specific training nodes. Like there is an army yachting node in Mumbai which trains people. That is possibly one of the reasons why, whether it is Asian Games or it is Commonwealth Games or it is Olympics, some names that straight away come to your mind. The silver medalist Colonel Rajyavardhan Singh Rathore is there.
Yes.
The ace sprinter Milkha Singh is again an ex-army person. Major Dhyan Singh, that legendary hockey player. And that shooter Vijay Kumar Sharma, who took a silver medalist in Olympics. So these are all things, it's very difficult to quantify and say that this translates to something. And the biggest thing about our organization is once you join the organization and you are part of the ecosystem, you are taken care of. Your extended family is also taken care of, irrespective of the place where you might be at any point of time. You could be very well serving in Sachin, you could be serving in the jungles of Northeast. But if your family is wherever it is, the local formation or the unit will always endeavor to reach out to them and see to it that they are kept comfortable and their immediate requirements are met. So that kind of a family bonhomie and that camaraderie and the sense to look after that extended, irrespective, and there have been any number of instances where a soldier has attained martyrdom, but then it's not that the family is forgotten. The connect with the family is maintained. The children of the family are encouraged to do well. There are quotas available for the gallantry award winners. There are quotas available for people who've been martyred in various operations. So these are all things, it's very difficult to put a price on these kind of things. And, the sense of belongingness and the fact that you are part of an extended family and that you continue to be even after you are no longer in active service. So even after a soldier retires or an officer or anybody for that matter, I mean, soldier is a generic term, which is better that way.
Absolutely. Yeah.
He continues to be part of the family and his interests and requirements are constantly met, whether it is medical facilities or anything for that matter. Anybody in distress, there is a redressal and a response mechanism in place. So you asked a very pointed question. I've not been able to give you a pointed answer, but
it is more than a point. It's not a blank answer. It's more than a point. You're focused very well. It's money is okay to some level. I do agree, but beyond that, all these facilities, I would call it as perquisites. Now, so many sports which you mentioned, I could just know only 2 or 3. Many such, skydiving, that paratrooping, gliding. All those things are something which a normal human being or an ordinary civilian cannot afford to have it, or they don't get an opportunity. So by joining a different sports, it's just not for your perquisites and your pay, which is important. I'm not denying. But these are a vast and wider opportunity for individual to go ahead and get used to it. So that's a lovely answer. So it was more elaborate than being focused answer from the General Saab.
Saab, one more.
Yes, please go ahead, sir. Please go ahead, sir.
Yeah, one more thing I must add here is, that we select people and send them to the IITs for getting to do their masters. So year on year, I would say somewhere around 50 to 60 people get a chance to go to the top institutes in the country to get to do their masters. So the graduate engineers who join Army, should they show potential and if their performance is good, they'll get a chance to go and do masters in one of the elite institutions of the country.
So you are an example. You are an example. You did your you yourself. Which year did you do that, General Sir?
That was I did 92 to 94. I did.
And that was IIT Kharagpur.
IIT Kanpur.
Kanpur. Yes. Kharagpur or Kanpur?
Kanpur.
Kanpur. Okay, go ahead, sir. I'm sorry for interruption.
So this is not something which possibly. And there is another thing. What happens is, for those of us, for whatever reasons, you are at the twilight of your career, you are given an option to take study leave for 2 years, wherein you can go pursue a qualification or an education of your choice, of course, with some amount of usefulness to the organization when you come back, put up a minimum qualifying service of 3 years, then choose to go and settle down in life. So, this facilitation of easing people out whenever he wants to go. And these are all things, I mean, it doesn't happen everywhere and it can't be kind of quantified and put in blocks to say, this is the benefit you're going to be getting.
So every individual serving the nation through Indian Army is a soldier, no doubt about it. But then we are focused on talking about those commissioned officers. And I did mention, you also did mention something to do with OLQ, officer like quality. General Saab, in your opinion, which are the 3 top officer-like quality which must be imbibed into the minds of our children who are opting to get into either Army or Air Force or Navy? Which are the top 3 qualities that they must at least start getting those qualities in themselves? Not while they're going for the SSB selection that they build those qualities. It has to be inborn in themselves. If not, at least they must develop that skills of a officer-like quality so that they get through those SSBs much more easier. So what are the qualities in your mind it comes when I ask you, what is the first quality you must have? General, I know you're not very happy about my question.
Yeah, not because of anything. If I get my ranking wrong, then I'll be in kind of trouble.
There's nothing like in your opinion. So what are the few? Okay, let us not rank it. Let us not rank it, General. At least let us say like these are the qualities one must have. Officer-like quality.
I would put
please.
Integrity, dependability, and forthrightness, because everything is all about being honest in life and
Absolutely.
being forthright. See, discipline is a given. I mean, there is a certain discipline which you're always supposed to maintain. Discipline, decorum is a given. So I don't want to put discipline. Absolutely. But integrity in everything that you do.
Integrity, yes.
Yes. Dependability, that you should, because you're a leader of people, so you're expected to be dependable. And forthrightness in being able to tell your opinion, irrespective of whether it is going to be liked by the other people or not. So since you're restricting it to 3, I'm stopping at 3.
I know the 50 minutes, I don't know how did it pass so quickly, but then we started off at around 4:30. We are at 5:22. The time has just, I don't know, galloped much more faster than normally it goes. General Saab, I just want to ask you as to how was your journey of last 33 years in the Indian Army? If somebody says, General Saab, just tell that within 2 or 3 sentences, your experience, the thrill wearing the uniform, and then, some 3, I limit it to again 3 sentences. No, if somebody asks you this question, what would be your answer? The thrill and the sort of an experience that you had gone through, the lovely days of your serving this country through the Indian Army. If you have to put it in a nutshell in 3 or 4 sentences, what would be the answer? General Saab, could you just tell us on that particular point?
For this, it will be difficult to encapsulate it in 3 or 4 sentences.
All right, I know it'll go for years. I'm talking about 33 years of your service. No, but otherwise, what do you really enjoy being an army officer? Oh my God, this is what. For me, I wanted to be an officer, army officer. I would have enjoyed wearing those uniforms. Going for the morning parade for the uniform. I in fact represented. I was in NCC. I marched in Marina those times, and it was my dad came and watched me, and my dad said, "Oh, what a lovely marching." So adorning the uniform of an army officer was my cup of tea. I feel proud to wear that particular olive green uniform. In your opinion, I'm sure that is also there. But other than that, what is your you feel proud of that? Serving nation, yes. But other than that, what? Just want to get one answer from you. Just one answer.
I would say I've had a very lucky and a very fortunate and fantastic journey. So the best of opportunities came my way, whether it is getting to do the masters at IIT Kanpur or to getting to do some of the best professional courses within the organization. So I've had the best of everything that an organization could offer. So there is nothing that I really missed, so to say. Yes, if I want to go back and if I wanted to do something better, yes, possibly, a little bit of more adventure in my early years, which I did not do. I should have, but now it is too late. So that is my regret. I couldn't do that. I wish I had done all that earlier. The opportunities were there. So that's what I would tell the people, the students who are watching today also. The opportunities are immense. It is just that, you have to grab it and make the best of it. Something which you always think that, okay, I will wait for another day, and that another day never happens. And then there are other things in life which take over. So,
General Saab, I've seen in videos. Generally, if you look at a civilian, like an engineer from the civilian engineer, I would say that if you have to construct a bridge, it takes months and years. But I've seen videos where the army personals, the defense personnel, they just make a bridge like this. How is that happening? If there is a river flowing, we all think it'll take so many months to construct a bridge. But an army personnel, patapat, something comes in, I don't know. How is it happening? Is it a magic? I'm sure it's not a magic, but how is it happening from the uniformed people? What is the secret of those people who are constructing bridges just within a fraction of a second? Over to you, General Sir.
You're risking facing the wrath and anger of all the civil engineers who are there around.
No, that's okay, because we also create civil engineers. So no, I represent.
No, that's not the case, because most of the equipment which the Corps of Engineers use are the quick erection variety, and which are meant to serve a particular purpose. So there are vehicle-based bridges. They come, they unfold. Then after the particular crossing, a ditch or a river or something for which it is meant, then it is supposed to fold back and get into the vehicle and then move up again. So whether it is the Bailey Bridge or the various other bridging equipment which we have, it's not meant for a long-term kind of a thing. You don't risk angering these civil engineers,
No. I see. I will face that, General, but they must know. See, I mean, I always.
I think they also do.
They also do a wonderful work, not as quickly as the defense personnel do. It is.
No, that's not the case. I think it's more a need driven.
Right.
What is more important is the ability of our engineers, the Corps of Engineers, to be able to work in an environment when there is shelling and other things happening, something which people, but then they are trained. There are high levels of training and higher levels of motivation, which makes them do all that.
They're like robots. I mean, they just come. I've seen this. Anyway, thanks a lot for your explanation on that. So we have just left with about 4 minutes, but I have some few questions, and I'm going to pick up the first question. Sir, is there any chance to join in the Army or Navy as an officer after MTech or BTech from Chemical Engineering Department? So I understand this student wants to do chemical engineering and want to get into either Navy or Indian Army. So will you pick up a chemical engineer? Over to you, General.
We do, but only thing he has to choose the SSC non-tech option. But I can get back to you separately on this, because I was also looking for this particular thing. Chemical, what I will do, I will possibly text you or something. Since this student can.
Yeah. I will do that. So I will. You can. Whoever has asked this question can put your number or give me your email ID. I will get the reply from General Saab and then pass it on to you.
Yeah, because then I can give him the correct information and not give a very generic answer that may not do the thing.
Sophia's question not worth asking, because in Army there's no discrimination, because every Indian is considered as a citizen of our country. There's no discrimination at all. I answer that and I vouch on that. So I think your question need to be fine-tuned on that. Sir, then the other question is like, sir, this is a personal question for you. What got you interested to join the Army, sir? These are all questions from the crowd.
Yeah, I know. I have to go back in time for 33 years and conjure up a lie. No, it is not that. Yes, I got kicked up about joining Army or the Navy. And like I was telling you, the Army SSB happened earlier and I decided to join Army. That's it. There were other options I had, but I said, let me join the armed forces. I did not have the kind of, what would I say, the deep insight which you have at this point of time. No way, I never had that.
Yeah, I know. Anyway, sir, there is one more. I mean, this is a question I know, like worth discussing. I saw a video in which Army persons disassembling a Jeep fast. See, look at those people's eyes go where. How is that possible? Constructing a bridge is okay. Corps of Engineers do that, but this person says pata. You remove all those and. See, I think it's all, I mean, I don't know what answer General would give on that. I find the type of training and accuracy, the dedication and the learning training what they go through, right? So that would be the answer. So I'm sure this is nothing else. And there is somebody who said, thank you. That's Lakshmi Venkatramani says, thank you. Very good session, and not much of any other questions on this. So I generally start on time. I generally close it on time. So I had requested General Saab for about 60 minutes of time. Now we are hitting 17:30. So General Saab, I have no words to thank you, and my apologies if I have diverted my questions from the usual questions I should have otherwise asked you. My sincere apologies. It's out of my own curiosity and interest towards clarifying my doubts, because I mentioned to you in the beginning of this session that it's my learning, it's our learning. So thank you so very much, General Saab, and we always, before we leave, pray to the Almighty that you and your family must be prosperous with good health, and then you must climb the ladders in the Indian Army. This is our prayer. With folded hands to the Almighty, we pray that you must keep climbing to the next position as early as possible. So thank you once again. Thank you is a small little word in English. Thank you. But then it is my privilege and honor to thank Major General Ramesh for spending his time all the way from Calcutta, and then now you're in Chennai, and all the way from Calcutta to Chennai, and you agreed to say yes to my request of sharing your knowledge on the Indian Army as far as how a day of a soldier goes, how the army is made of, and how you must get into the Indian Army, how the service is being rendered. So many things we discussed, and General Saab, it's time for us to say adieu and wind up this session. And before we leave, it's Medil Krish signing off from Amrita Vishwa Vidyapeetham, Coimbatore, and a big to General Saab. And thank you so much once again. Jai Hind! Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thanks to the technical team also.
Okay, thank you. So we'll catch up soon, General Saab. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good day.